This is such a busy news day that I had to come back on with you again. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. I mean, Zelensky, he just can't take a hint. He just went on to Fox and he refused to apologize for that dust up that you saw at the White House. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is taking questions from reporters. We're going to get to all of it, but first we begin on this new message that Donald Trump's FCC happens to be sending to one Whoopi Goldberg over at that show that I know you love to hate, The View, okay? So this is not very good news for Whoopi because they've been kind of indicating all along that, you know what, they have very little patience for a show that is so off the rails and so severely divorced from reality and so, well, frankly, divisive, right, to America. So Brendan Carr is the new guy at the FCC. Typically, the FCC doesn't really get involved in such stuff as trying to say, hey, you might want to be fair on your news coverage. But this is, after all, a different FCC and a different kind of Trump administration. And you know what? They're getting a little tired of some of the antics. Things like this. Remember when Whoopi Goldberg said this about how he was going to get rid of gays and lock them up and all kinds of crazy stuff?
I'm going to be, on day one, I'm going to be a dictator. Who says it to you, tells you. I'm going to put you people away. I'm going to take all the journalists. I'm going to take all the gay folks. I'm going to move you all around and disappear you. If that's the country you want, you know who to vote for. If that's not the country you want, you have to make a decision.
Well, they made a decision. And she was talking a bunch of smack, right? That's a bunch of garbage. And she knew it. They all knew it. I mean, all of these organizations, maybe they were getting paid for certain kinds of points of view. We can talk about that in USAID, but I will say this. Donald Trump's new head of the FCC is not messing around. And I'm not talking just about the letters, which we're going to get to. I've got a copy of the whole letter that he sent to Bob Iger over at Disney. Disney is the company, you see, that owns ABC News, and ABC News is the producer of The View. This is Brendan Carr, forgive me, out today. He just dropped this little, well, I guess you'd call it a short, this piece on social media. I'm telling you, this guy is not to be messed with.
All right, made it to the top with Hassan and his crew. They're swapping out the lighting system up here. Wonderful day with them. America's tower crews get the toughest jobs done. Super grateful for their work.
Wow, right. You saw that, right? I mean, that was kind of a ways down. I mean, I don't really know what he was thinking doing something like that, but maybe he likes to climb mountains on the side, do a little rock climbing, something like that. He's clearly not afraid of heights, and he's not afraid of Disney's Bob Iger or anyone at ABC News, and certainly not Whoopi Goldberg. Take a look. We also saw recently that he made it very clear he was going to move forward with some of these complaints that had been lodged against these networks for biased coverage. We know that Donald Trump, of course, has already sued and settled some of those lawsuits, which has actually recently come up for Brendan Carr. The Wall Street Journal had a piece recently saying, gosh, everybody thought that, like, Trump would be so pro-business and he'd be great with media. And, well, it turns out Trump's not really that keen on the media. Newsflash, guys. Wall Street Journal, you might want to wake up to that. He really didn't appreciate the media coverage he's gotten for the last, 8 years, shall we say. So here's this letter from Brendan to Bob Iger, okay? So he's now the guy who's running the whole FCC. So he's got the power. This is why this is important, guys. He's got the power to actually strip ABC of its affiliations that it gives to its affiliates. And so therefore, they wouldn't be able to collect all that revenue from all their various affiliates all over the country, and they wouldn't be able to air The View on those particular networks across the country. He writes, Dear Mr. Iger, Americans no longer trust the national news media to fully report accurately and fairly. Indeed, a recent Gallup survey showed only 31% of Americans have a great deal or even a fair amount of trust in the media, which includes ABC. This is a historic low for your industry and represents a steady decline from a high of over 70%. Describing this freefall, Jeff Bezos, owner of another national media outlet, The Washington Post, recently stated that our profession is now the least trusted of all. Something we are doing is clearly not working. And then he goes on to cite the fact that they had to pay $16 million because George Stephanopoulos thought he could be a big shot and actually libel the president on the air. Remember that one? Well, that cost him $16 million, or ABC, I should say. And so he cites that as an example of their untrustworthiness. He even cites Good Morning America, World News Tonight, David Muir, NFL football, Jimmy Kimmel's late night show. And then there's this subtle message, shall we say, to the one and only View. In other words, the show that is perhaps the most brazen of all is the one that's the elephant in the room. You know the elephant I'm talking about, right?
My generation fought tooth and nail so that you would not have to hear that kind of speak
this
again.
Rhetoric, yeah.
You would not have to hear or be. We fought to make sure. We fought and said to people, if you're a stand-up, the only comic that can hit everybody really is Don Rickles. You're the only one who gets to do that. But everybody else has to be better and smarter and funnier.
Well, he was hilarious, too. Well, this guy's not even funny.
But that's the point. That's the point. But my other point is, just know, we fought to make sure you couldn't do that. Talk about women. Talk to women the way people are talking. Talk to men. Talking to gay folks. Talking to anybody who is different visually. You didn't get to say stuff to them like that. Now folks have lost their mind.
She was actually referring to the comedian that appeared at Madison Square Garden. And while I don't need to justify any of his jokes, what I will say is that typically in comedy, you know, there are various, dare I say, stereotypes, right? I'm Irish. There are stereotypes we can make about the Irish. And you know what? I'm going to get those jokes all day long because, you know, they're funny, right? And so Whoopi's completely lost her sense of humor. It's amazing that she was ever a comedian because she has no humor, you see, when it comes to anything Trump. And so Disney is now looking at this ABC network and particularly this show and particularly Whoopi Goldberg herself as a liability. So you saw recently, I reported on this, I said this was coming, they fired a bunch of her producers. So all of Whoopi's producers are bye-bye. They kept the guy who's like the main guy at the show, but they're getting rid of all the producers. They've also told Whoopi to tone it down. And so you'll notice lately, she really has backed off trying to go after Trump. She's all of a sudden going after Elon Musk. He's the newest, latest and greatest target. I mean, she was even making fun of his kid's name. It's really kind of disgusting. But she has to have somewhere to go, and she's been boxed out of Trump land because they're like, you know, you're kind of on your last legs. We don't really have a whole lot more patience for this or for you, Whoopi, and your giant salary. So you'll notice she's very, very quiet. And I think she's struggling to kind of find her niche. I mean, what does she have if she doesn't have Donald Trump to go after? What do any of them have? Not much, right? And you consider this. I mean, if she was there for any reason, that reason was to go after Trump. You remove that opportunity for her and you're left with what? Just a woman who, let's face it, is not very nice to look at. All right? You know, and they're really into their hairstyles and their clothes over there on The View. And, you know, I'm not tuning in to see what Whoopi's got on today, shall we say. On top of that, you've got Disney dumping its two big DEI signature programs. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't want it anymore because shareholders are like, this is no good. I mean, they join a lot of companies. Goldman Sachs recently this week just came out and said they're getting rid of DEI. Nobody wants this because it turns out that the DEI stuff doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't actually make any money. And so shareholders are saying, hey, enough is enough. And you've also happened to got a president who's making it, well, it already was illegal. Let's face it, it's not not constitutional. You can't discriminate against somebody based on the color of their skin. And if you're hiring somebody who's Hispanic or black or trans or whatever, I mean, actually, that's a whole other category. Let's stick with the color of the skin. You cannot actually say, I'm not going to hire the white girl because I need to hire the black one. That doesn't fly in America. Harvard University found that out, courtesy of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So now they're looking at dumping Whoopi Goldberg. She has become a massive liability. The show is in a bad spot. I mean, they had that guy, what's his name, Charlemagne. Charlemagne, do you know him? He's a radio host. He went on the show. He actually told them to their faces that they basically suck. We're going to get to that in a second. But reminder, one of the reasons I created 76 Research was because of all this insane DEI stuff, right? So, if you're thinking about investing in Disney and you're looking at how the stock has gotten cut in half over the last 5 years, maybe it has something to do with, in the last 5 years, we put in place DEI. So guess what? We changed our storylines on Snow White. We changed our storylines on Captain America. Now Captain America, the Marvel franchise, right? That was like unstoppable. It's a mess. They've actually got the worst box office receipts they've ever seen for the Captain America franchise. And it's all because of this DEI crap. Okay? So, you know what, as an investor, I care about what makes money. And that's what you need to care about. That's what we care about at 76 Research. Go to 76research.com, use my code word dollar, DOLLAR, so you can sign up for the 76 report. You get that. I'll tell you, for those of you that are ambitious out there and really want to get serious about investing, look at these model portfolios, 10 to 15 stocks in each single one of them. We have the American Resilience portfolio, it's growth. We have inflation protection. We have income builder because, of course, if somebody wants to retire someday, you better have some income coming in the door. Meanwhile, I'm telling you, The View's in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble, guys. A lot of trouble. The Charlemagne, or whatever his name is, he's a radio host. He went on this week and he looks at Joy Behar. He looks at her in the face. They've had so many legal issues. They have to now have somebody who sits in the control room to just fact check them somehow, some way. I mean, they're very hard to fact check, right? Because there's a lot of untruths that go on to that show, but they now have an effort underway to have a legal note read. And so Charlemagne went on this show and he's like, listen, you guys are done. You're over. Like, cable news is done. Network news is done. I totally agree with him because the action is over here. And I guess he has a podcast too. And I mean, this is just a whole different ballgame. And this is the future. It absolutely, positively is the future. And so cable companies, network news companies, for a variety of structural reasons, right, within the business itself, which we've talked about, but also from an authenticity standpoint. Charlemagne's like, nobody trusts you guys. I mean, you guys kind of suck, right? And so she's like, what are you talking about? Take a look.
Now that Trump has won, you say that you don't think cable news will ever truly cover him honestly again. Why?
Well, not even just cable news, no network. Nobody, because they didn't do it before, so why would they do it now? They're scared to death.
What
He's the
about
president of the United States of America.
Have you watched The View?
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. Sonny, I saw you have to apologize a couple times last week, so somebody's coming with some notes from downstairs.
I'm not apologizing.
Okay.
I'm making a legal note as an attorney of law.
Because we have a petty president, our incoming,
yes,
that is going to be very litigious.
Who is litigious, but that doesn't mean that's not a mistake.
We check ourselves.
Yeah, we check ourselves. I don't know as I'm so sure about that. You actually say a lot of things that are incorrect all the time, which is why they have to have a lawyer type person sitting there in the control room policing them. And so Charlemagne's right. In other words, their day has come and gone because they're not authentic and they're not real and they're not actually telling the truth. They're just giving a certain narrative that I guess they think people want to hear or USAID is paying for. That actually hasn't come out. See, I'll give myself a check, right? You know what? I always tell you the truth. And yes, we have learned, thanks to Elon Musk and his team, that a lot of money was going to a lot of news organizations, including AP, including Reuters, including the New York Times, including Politico. And before Politico tries to say, oh, no, it was just for our subscriptions, let me tell you, nobody has a $10,000 a pop subscription to Politico, except for government workers that were paying $8.2 million, interestingly enough, in an election year for them. I mean, Bloomberg we can talk about it because there's proprietary information there. Trust me, there's nothing that you want $10,000 a year for over at Politico. Anyway, Joy's having a hard time with this because, she thinks they are great. They are just wonderful. Like, what is this other stuff out there? These podcasts, these streamers, like, who are they? What are they? They're just a bunch of garbage as far as she's concerned, she told us.
That's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
we're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have, the legal note here.
The human legal note?
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He believes in dragons? He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like dinosaur-y type of animals, roamed the earth when people did. So this is the type of really, really bad information that's going out there.
Well, in defense, there are some really good news.
It's possible that Donald Trump did roam the earth when dinosaurs were here.
There are.
Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
I'm sorry, I had to play that on a loop. Joe did respond to Joy and said, he sort of explained that they were having an in-depth conversation. Because, by the way, his show is 3 hours and it's just conversation. And he was remarking on how it's sort of very interesting that there's these like mythological type dragons throughout art, right, in history. And what did that suggest, et cetera? So they had this long-winded conversation about that, from which Joy took away, okay, he believes in dragons, which he doesn't, but was commenting on how there was something in the human psyche because you had seen this for so long. He also said, look, she's very worried about losing her job. And as a result, she's lashing out. She doesn't understand. She wants to try and undermine anyone who's doing anything different, because this is a whole new space that it's extremely threatening. It's very, very threatening. So Charlamagne making it clear, Joe Rogan having, also made it clear, and yours truly making it clear that Joy Behar, it's coming to an end. So you know what? I'm really glad that you put your house on the market in the Hamptons. Sag Haber, $10.5 million for her little 4,000 square foot Victorian. $10.5 million. I mean, go figure. But I think she knows. I think she knows that it's kind of run its course. And I'm not sure that show actually can stay in business. In part, yes, because of people like Brendan Carr at the FCC and Donald Trump, who's not willing to put up with this nonsense. And in part because of shows like this. And thank you for subscribing and sharing and liking. And the ratings are just amazing. And we're getting numbers because you guys are tuning in because it is authentic and it is real. And we have a way of connecting that, frankly, you just don't have in network television. And so that all matters. And so they're increasingly becoming more and more and more irrelevant. But then occasionally, they do these wild things like, oh, I don't know, is Joy suddenly becoming anti-immigrant? And this was kind of something for her to say, for a show that was all about loving people coming here over the border with, absolutely nothing and coming in and being drains on the system. They were all sort of fine with that, but lately I've started to hear them echo a different tune. The other day, Whoopi Goldberg actually said, I don't know anybody who's okay with criminals being here, known criminals. There's something like 650,000 known criminals that are here illegally. And the White House would say, well, they all are because they're here illegally. But we're talking about people who have homicide records, assault records, all that kind of stuff. All right. So Whoopi suddenly comes out and she's like, well, of course, we don't want criminals here. And then Joy had this little number. Watch.
And Elon Musk kisses his butt and strokes his tiny ego or big ego, whatever it is. And he doesn't get to he can take a nap while the guy who was not born in this country, who was born under apartheid in South Africa, so has that mentality going on. He was pro-apartheid, as I understand it.
He's a naturalized citizen.
Right?
Now.
He's a naturalized citizen.
Now he's a naturalized citizen.
Oh, really? How did he do that? Did he come over the border legally?
He had an H-1B visa, I
He
believe.
flew in.
Yeah, he allegedly overstayed that visa.
Yeah, but I think this is just perfectly wonderful for Trump. He can take a nap and let this foreign agent, an enemy of the United States, do his job.
Anybody else?
I don't like Elon. I wouldn't go as far as to necessarily call him an enemy of the United States yet. Let's give him a little bit of time.
Okay. So, where was the legal note on that? I'm just curious. I mean, so first of all, he is, thanks to Alyssa, she's trying to correct him there and point out that actually, in fact, Elon Musk did become a naturalized citizen. But I don't know if that's actually correct what she's saying in terms of the apartheid thing. There is a quote from Elon's mother in which she said, in South Africa, if you publicly opposed apartheid, you went to jail. This was something she put in a post on social media. In Russia, if you publicly oppose the war, you go to jail. She also pointed out that Musk was just a child and should not be held responsible for the actions of his government. She's like, New York Times, are you going to blame children for decisions made by governments? So anyway, I don't think there was a legal note on that one. So, hey, Brandon Carr, we got another one for you, right? We got a live one. Meanwhile, as this is all going on and they're like stressing about immigration and this, that, and the other, guess what Donald Trump did today? Donald Trump came out, hey, Spirit-filled, thank you so much. Appreciate the generosity. Hey, Donald Trump came out and signed an executive order saying that English is actually the official language of the United States of America. Wow. I mean, it's sort of strange that we have to do this, right? But how many times, on the phone, it's like, press 2 for Espanol? Or even in my little state that I grew up in, New Hampshire, I've never really understood why when you cross over the border from Massachusetts into New Hampshire, there's a big sign that says, Bienvenue. That's French for welcome. And then in little letters, it says, welcome to New Hampshire. I mean, they're coming from Massachusetts. I might understand it a little bit better on the other side of the border, right? Because you're coming from Canada, from the Montreal, Quebec region, driving down into New Hampshire. And so then you might expect a sign in your language. But if you're coming up from Massachusetts, I'm sorry, you ought to speak English. So we have that in New Hampshire, and it's always kind of been like, why? Why? And then you look around and you think about how isolated immigrant communities become in this country because they do not speak the language that's going to enable them to have a more prosperous future. A great example is New York's Chinatown. You can live in New York in Chinatown and never have to speak a word of English. Think about that. You have kids that are in school, in public school in New York, where they're not actually being taught English. They're taught a lot of their subjects in their native language because, we have to be accepting of all these different cultures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like when they give them the $350 in food, the illegal migrants coming into New York City, you get the fancy hotel room. Well, no more, but you were getting the fancy hotel room with maid service. And you were getting a $350 credit card per week to be able to go out and buy food that was ethnically appropriate. They found that, everybody needs ethnically appropriate food. No, I'm sorry, you're in America. We're serving pizza tonight. Deal, right? And it's the same exact thing on the language front. If you're going to come to this country, one should expect that we have a cohesive identity, and part of that identity is speaking the same language. I actually speak 4, believe it or not. English is my first language and clearly my preferable language, but I speak 4 languages, and if I put my mind to it, I bet I could throw in a few more. But, I say that just because it's not like I'm anti-language or any of that. I think it's great to be able to speak a lot of languages, but we got to have one that unites us, right? And we got to start acting more like we care about being united. And if you come to this country back in the old days, right, when a lot of our ancestors came, it was all about, we must speak English. We must speak English. We must be more American. And we were all united in that American identity. When I was a little girl, I used to say to my mom, because we're Irish, the Olympics are on. Like, who should I, because we still like very much, hey, I got my green on today and it's not even St. Patrick's Day. We very much identify as Irish. So when I was little, I was confused and I'd say, Mom, like, who do we root for? And she said, always America. Trish, always America. You are American first. Yes, your heritage is Irish. But in this country, you're American. And that is the message that we need more and more and more. So if it means having one single language and everybody has to speak it, so be it, okay? You can appreciate your culture, but remember what you are. You are American first and foremost before anything else. This show, though, oh my gosh, back to The View, and why it's going to get canceled very soon. I'm telling you. And you know what? I've been right on everything, haven't I? I mean, I hate to say I told you so. But I did on a lot of these things. Okay, they really hate RFK Jr., really, really hate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he's going to go in there. He's going to do all kinds of things. And I do think that these hosts are somewhat brainwashed. And there's a consensus out there that you have to sort of subscribe to this, that, and the other. I don't. I need to see the information, right? Trust but verify. I actually want to see all the information before I believe something. Look at our food industry, for goodness sakes. I mean, we got all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of bad stuff in our food. And, you look at the health rates of this country, they're not exactly good. All right. So RFK Jr. wants to make America healthy again. And so that's a big part of his platform, but it's extremely threatening to the food lobbies. It's because what if it turns out that the food companies are kind of like tobacco companies? What if the food companies knew all along that they were kind of poisoning you? When I was a young correspondent at CBS News, I remember doing a story on how this combination of sugar and fat, they were doing this study in mice, was nearly the equivalent of cocaine because it was so addictive. That sugar, that fat, and salt together made for a recipe that made these mice very much addicted to it. So food is something that should certainly be looked at, but it freaks a lot of people out. Big pharma is something that needs to be looked at because you look at the pricing on drugs, and I want to get to that. Because, there's a team out there that's doing a lot of work on this front, and they're trying to help bring down drug costs. And yet they're fighting establishment media like The View, and they're fighting these lobbying companies. Anyway, here's The View on RFK Jr.
So, ladies, what do you think of these confirmations?
I'm really nervous, about the whole kit and caboodle, but RFK Jr. is scary to me because a lot of the things we've talked about vaccinations, but we're also seeing a huge upticks of some health problems. We've had measles outbreaks in Texas, at least 22 children, 2 adults affected. The flu levels in the U.S. are higher than they've been in 15 years. And I have to believe some of that comes from the COVID vaccine being politicized and then people holding back on all vaccines because flu vaccines are also down almost by half among kids. Yeah. And Bill Gates was here. And he warned us we'll have another pandemic. And I remember asking him during commercial, what happened to the once-in-a-lifetime pandemic? Because I thought we could check that box off. And he was like, no, because there's a lot of things happening in regard to environmentally, people being more in touch in certain areas of the world with animals, which is where these viruses come from. And then he went on to say, and there's a high chance of bioterrorism. So he's like, there's a 10% chance in the next 4 years we could do 2020 all over again. So I think that's the part that's getting me is, the pandemic leading into an RFK Jr., leading into all the numbers we're seeing. That's where I'm kind of concerned right now.
Okay, well, I would just say that we didn't do it so right last time around, right? And I warned of that at the time. Because you can't shut down your entire economy. You need to actually save the people that need saving, like the people in the nursing home that, the governor of New York was just sending in all the COVID victims into the nursing home. So you had young people that were going to get healthy from COVID in a short amount of time, spreading the virus amongst the elderly. Like, that was wrong. And yet they shut down every business, okay? Every business, small business owners will never come back from that. There was a whole bunch of stuff that went wrong. I wouldn't take Gates' word on everything, just saying, okay, Sarah? The View, I wouldn't take his word on everything. And I think that RFK Jr. is coming in, he's trying to put a lot of pressure on various industries to kind of, get the big money out of the way. I mean, look at this one, okay? This is in Politico. RFK Jr. says government-run healthcare is failing Americans. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment to make, because clearly we are not as healthy as other countries, and we probably need to rethink everything, okay? Like, we're rethinking taxes, and we're thinking about, okay, can we get revenue from tariffs instead of taxes? There's ways to approach this. And so he's trying to be innovative and come up with new solutions. And I'll tell you, it's time, because just think about what they're doing in terms of drug prices, all right? Drug prices alone. I mean, Big Pharma raised prices on 575 brand name drugs in January alone, blocking competition. They spent millions of dollars pushing overpriced medicines to hardworking Americans, and they were doing this all before Donald Trump came into office. So guess what? What are they doing right now? They're freaking out. They're all upset about RFK Jr. They're pressuring Congress to implement mandates that will undermine the one real check against drug companies and ban the very market-based incentives that help employers and families save on prescription and healthcare costs. So there's this group, Conservatives to Lower Healthcare Costs, that's really taking this on in a meaningful way. And I wanted to just flag it for you guys. You can learn more if you go to pharmawindfall.com. But it's Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs, and they really are actively trying to make sure that we don't get saddled with higher and higher inflation thanks to drug companies that are just trying to make an extra buck. I mean, here's an interesting thing. The proposals that the drug companies are putting out right now would actually hand Big Pharma a $32 billion money grab, all at the expense of American employers and American families. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, Big Pharma is not on our side. Like, they're not on your side. They're on their side only. And so they're fighting. They're opposing anything that RFK Jr. is going to come in and try and do to lower drug prices. Now, Trump wants lower drug prices. RFK Jr. wants lower drug prices. I think it's safe to say we all want lower drug prices, and we need to find a system that's still within our conservative sensibility, right? That's actually going to work. And so I love what they're doing there. Go check it out if you get a chance, And hey, maybe they can help you pressure your congressperson so that they don't vote with Big Pharma, so that they don't vote with the big lobbying money, because, that's not good for America. Meanwhile, wow, you guys, I mean, there's so much news today. This is incredible. I mean, you saw what happened, right, with the Epstein files. We were waiting. Okay, what was going to happen? And, well, do we have a cricket sound we can play? Nothing. So you got to ask yourself, what really happened with that big release of the Epstein files that weren't? What was going on? I mean, hey, Pam Bondi had nothing. And then she said, hey, we got nothing, so now I want something, and demanded to have stuff on her desk today at 8 a.m. Well, today is Friday, February 28th, and at 8 a.m. I got up early just to check and say, okay, I was all ready to go on camera. Hair, makeup, everything. I was here, ready, willing, and able. Nothing. So why did she lead us to believe there was something? I think she was a little annoyed. She saw this yesterday. She put out a big letter. I got a copy of it right here because I know it's hard to read on screen. She sent Kash Patel quite a letter. Seemed to be blaming him. Is a CYA move? Saying, I was told that there were thousands of pages The FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised as I was to learn of this new information. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, February 28th, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio, and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. Well, guess what? 8 a.m. came and went, and she got nothing. So one thing that I thought that was interesting in that letter is how she said, when you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised at this as I was. Well, if that's the case, then Pamela, why? I ask. Because you know what? Credibility is everything. And this administration is all about transparency. And by the way, I love her. I've been on TV with her many times. She's come on my show. We've been on Newsmax together. I do think a lot of her, and I am hopeful that she's going to be able to do some good stuff. But why'd she go on Jesse's show and say this?
A lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have well over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information. But it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well, we'll
along
look for
with his
that.
co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help. That's for sure.
He sure did.
Okay. So she knew at that point that all she had was the flight logs. And yet she said, it's really sick what he did, and you're going to see some stuff. And so everybody was all revved up. And then there were some other weird things that happened, by the way. I just want to say, Mike, thank you for your generosity. So appreciated. Mike McAllister, I always will be honest and straight with you. Nelson, thank you so much as well. I appreciate, I'm going to get back to your comment because you like my financial research too, so we'll talk about that. But Pam Bondi, all right, she kind of got everybody all excited. And then she brought a lot of influencers down to D.C., a lot of people I know. And this was weird. She brought them into a room. They had a meeting, the influencers, and Kash Patel was there, and they talked to them a bit, and then they handed them these binders with the information on Epstein. And then they told them it was embargoed and that they couldn't talk about it. They had to leave their phones, by the way, outside. They weren't allowed to bring their phones in when they went in. And in the meantime, she never coordinated, say, with, Ana Paulina Luna, who's the representative from Florida. Very pretty representative, former Maxim cover girl, just saying, who's in charge of the entire sort of rollout for the task force, for the declassification of everything, whether it be the Epstein files, whether it be RFK, whether it be JFK, whether it be MLK. She's in charge of that. And Pam never alerted her to that. We're going to get to her comments. She didn't appreciate that. Well, I'll show you right now. Well, first we'll show you. Look at these influencers, right? Like the influencers are getting it ahead of, say, the person who's in charge of rolling it out. And yet there was nothing in it. So then I'm like, well, what'd she think? Did she think they were really stupid and that they would think that they had something really great? They didn't have their phones in there. They walked out of there. The press pool was staying and waiting for some other dignitary that was going to be there. And so they wound up getting their pictures. So a whole bunch of really, DC Drano's on there. I see him, and it's like, you guys, what was this, some kind of dog and pony show? You drag everyone in, you give them these binders, they tell them it's embargoed, but you can go and read it. Somehow the cameras are outside, they catch a picture, and in the meantime, Everybody else is like, wait, what? What? Anna Paulina Luna's like, here she is. She was very frank. She said, I nor the task force were given or reviewed the Epstein documents being released today. A New York Post story just revealed that the documents will simply be Epstein's phone book. And then she writes in all caps, this is not what we or the American people asked for, and a complete disappointment. Get us the information we asked for. Yes, thank you, Anna Paulina Luna, representative from Florida, leading the task force. Thank you. Because this is not what we expected. And so I'm just asking a question, like if Pam knew that all she had was a bunch of nonsense, right? It was just a bunch of information that, by the way, is primarily already out in the public domain. I mean, they have all the flight logs, some of them out there already. So none of what was released was especially interesting. If she already knew that, then why did she kind of goose everyone up? And by the way, from a rollout standpoint, I'm just going to say, as a member of the media, I don't know what she was thinking on that. Like, did she think she could dupe them, that they would actually get excited about those binders and that they wouldn't realize that all the information was sort of already out there anyway? Word of advice, Trish to Pam, friend to friend. If the FBI is not cooperating with you, and if they are refusing to give you the documentation that you need in order to charge the necessary people that you need to charge, in order to reveal to the public what really went on, then you got to get out there. You got to hold a big press conference, not send a flimsy little letter, okay? I mean, it's a strongly worded letter, but it's just a letter. I want a press conference. I want to see you and Cash and Dan Bongino. We'll throw him in there too. Get everybody up there. Be a united front. Get Anna Paulina Luna up there too. Be a united front and you say, we demand this. And you make it really clear. But instead, I'm left thinking, was she trying to pull the wool over our eyes? Did she think that the influencers were going to go along with this? And then why didn't she tell someone like Representative Luna ahead of time? Because maybe Representative Luna would have been able to clue her in and say, this is really bad. This is not going to be a good look for us because we're promising something and you don't have the goods. And by the way, as we speak, the goods might be actually being destroyed if they're not already destroyed. Whistleblower, FBI whistleblower, Garrett O'Boyle, warning of exactly this.
That there are FBI servers that are sort of standalone. And people inside the FBI have been working night and day to destroy files on these servers. And I was told that once these files are destroyed, the way they are set up, that even Elon Musk could not restore them. So that's happening right now as we speak.
So yeah, I'd be going crazy right now if I were Pam. And I would be enlisting all of my colleagues. I would not be doing this out on an island. The answer is you actually need to be a force. And I want to know what's going on in the New York FBI field office that they are not releasing stuff, because they apparently had videotape. They apparently had audio tapes. They apparently had thousands of pages of investigative material. And guess what? We didn't get to see any of it. And that's weird. And then she gives a deadline that came and went today. Pam's like, I need it. I want it on my desk at 8 a.m. It never happened. I have some suspicions on this. I have some reasons why I think this is. But first, let's go to my former colleague over at Fox, Jesse Waters, who, by the way, was probably kind of annoyed because she'd come on his show the night before and goosed everybody up, and we thought there was going to be something big, and then nothing. So he's angry with the field office, understandably. He may not be saying it, but he might be a little angry with her, too.
So who's in charge at the New York FBI field office? Who's withholding Epstein docs from the Attorney General? James Dennehy is running the show there. There he is. This is the guy who emailed his whole staff to dig in after Trump took office. And don't forget that James Comey's daughter is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. She worked on the Epstein and Maxwell cases. She's kind of knee-deep in this. Epstein was facing sex trafficking charges in Lower Manhattan. Where's all that paperwork? The FBI seized computers, surveillance videos, banking records, file cabinets, and photographs from all of Epstein's properties in New Mexico, the Virgin Islands, Palm Beach, and in New York. The Justice Department also gave Epstein a sweetheart non-prosecution deal 17 years ago. Where are those files? The Bureau of Prisons. Where are those files? You remember where Epstein killed himself? I asked Bill Barr about that, why everything seemed to go wrong that night.
When I first heard all the information and all the coincidences here, I was suspicious.
What were the coincidences? I mean, those were a lot of coincidences.
Well, one of the cameras was out.
Right.
He was supposed to have a cellmate. The cellmate left. They didn't replace the cellmate. And the guards who were supposed to check him every half hour didn't check him.
My EMT source said he was on the scene immediately to pull Epstein's body out to the morgue. And when he got to the cell, he saw 7 people there touching Epstein's body and moving stuff around.
Wow. That's not good. On top of that, I spoke to my source, who was actually Epstein's doctor, who had spoken to him just a day earlier. He said he seemed in great shape, other than, and not to be indelicate, apparently he was having some constipation issues. More information than you need to know. I know. But just to kind of put a little detail in there for you. Other than that, he was doing just great. And he thought that he might actually be able to get some other kind of deal. I mean, perhaps his problem was if, in fact, as it is alleged, he had any connections to U.S. intelligence, maybe his problem was that he threatened that he might have the goods, and he thought that was going to actually help him get a better deal, but actually it didn't. It actually may have wound up in something. Now, we don't know that. So I'm going to be clear and clean with you on that one, but I have my suspicions because guess what? I wasn't born yesterday. I spoke with the doctor. He was doing well. His lawyers say he was in good spirits. And yet they moved him to a single cell. And then the 2 guards somehow managed to be asleep. And then the cameras suddenly went out. And then you heard what Jesse said. That adds to the complexity of all of this. With 7 people being found around him after that the EMTs are talking about. I mean, so it goes back to, I hate to quote the Daily Beast because, you know, the Daily Beast is just a terrible publication in my estimation. They can take things out of context, but they did say something that I think sort of adds up. When Alex Acosta was getting looked at for Labor Department at the Trump administration, he was asked apparently about that sweetheart deal that Epstein got back in 2008 down in Florida because he had been the U.S. attorney at that point. And the belief was, or the accusation was, as far as the Daily Beast was concerned, their sourcing said that Acosta said that Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and should thus be left alone. So that might help explain why he was 12 hours in the prison, 12 hours out, and only had to do 8 months or something for some pretty heinous crimes. And then there's allegations that he somehow was getting paid off by the CIA, by other intelligence networks around the world. And that's kind of scary stuff. I mean, look, it goes back to Ghislaine though, right? Ghislaine Maxwell, whose own dad was reported to be a spy himself. Apparently he put in these software systems, surveillance software systems that were like backdoor entries into other intelligence agencies. So that enabled the Mossad to get extra good information from, say, the CIA or something else. That's what's been reported. And it's also been reported that, well, the daughter was sort of his favorite kid and she kind of learned the family business, if you would. And she may have learned it so well that, when she got arrested, she kept her mouth shut because she's still alive. She's doing 20 years. She tried to buy a house in New Hampshire. Kid you not. I'm like, why? How? They also said it really was interesting that she didn't try and escape the country because she probably had the resources and the sources in order to do that. But that the thinking was, okay, well, if she's really in deep and she's such a good source that she's not going to talk, we can just let her do 2 decades. Maybe she gets out for good behavior and then she'll come back to the family business. I don't know. I'll just say this, Jeffrey Epstein, I'm told, I never met him, but I was told by his doctor, actually, he was one of the most charming people you would ever meet. He also clearly, as we know, and it has been proven out, had an extremely, and I'm trying to be cautious with my words here because we like to make sure that, you know, if the kids are ever watching, that they can, okay? But let's just say he had very deviant behavior, disgusting deviant behavior. And as a result of that deviant behavior, you know, you kind of look and say, did Ghislaine, did she target him knowing that he might be a good continuation, shall we say, of the family business? And did she then install all this software in his New York townhouse and in the islands? Is that, and then was this so-called compromise that these intelligence agencies were able to buy off of Epstein and Ghislaine? I mean, I don't think it's that wild. A lot of people believe he was an intelligence asset, including his doctor. Steve Frischman, thank you so much. It's good to see you back in the house. Again, appreciate the generosity. It's nice to have so many regulars here. And this is show 2 today, right? We had the first show and now we have the second show because there's that much news to get to. But I do think that all of this is extremely suspicious. And so Pam Bondi needs to be asking the right questions, and she needs to work with the team around her to make sure that they're a united front and they're going in. Because I'm telling you, there's some stuff that may have gone down. Comey was worried about this, right? Remember?
When you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time, but people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American. This election matters. Because of a reason like that, people have to participate. You cannot sit on the sideline. I don't care how you feel about Joe Biden, you must vote for him because the consequences on the other side are too severe.
Well, it looks like people are willing to take that gamble, okay? You know, Tucker Carlson, right before he got canned at Fox, and I say that with affection because we have that in common. You know, it's better over here, trust me. Anyway, Tucker was on his show, and he was pointing out that they had destroyed a lot of the evidence way back when. I mean, the stuff that Pam is asking for, this is the sad part, guys, it may not exist.
It's approaching 4 years since Jeffrey Epstein died in detention in New York City. It's very obvious he was killed. The more you look at the details, and we have, the more clear it is that somebody got inside the most secure federal lockup in our most populated city and murdered Jeffrey Epstein. But who? Well, the Department of Justice is in charge of finding out who, of course, and they say they have had an investigation for almost 4 years. So periodically we reach out to DOJ and ask, how's the Epstein investigation going? We called today again. They told us they'd complete and publish their report soon. We also thought it'd be worth reaching out to the NYPD. We wanted to know what was said in any 911 calls from the federal lockup in New York on the day that Epstein was found dead. NYPD has just turned over one of those calls to us, and it reveals the truth. Here it is.
This is funny. Yeah, clever. In other words, they don't have it.
Oh, just kidding. We can't play that 911 call for you because it's been deleted. Really? Just like the videotape. Why? Because we are, quote, well past the 12-month retention period. So it looks like the NYPD deleted the recordings of 911 calls from the jail. So we thought, well, how about the FBI? We called over to the FBI to say,
forget it.
Do you have any 911 recordings from the jail, from the federal lockup? And we got no response. No one seems interested anymore, but we're interested.
Yeah. Okay, so if U.S. intelligence was involved, I think it's going to be really hard to prove this out. And I think that Pam needs to get right out in front of this. And we need to start very much being on offense and not overpromising and under-delivering, okay? In this case, if they're not giving you stuff, you got to go nuclear. I haven't heard from her today. Of course, there's been a lot of stuff going on, shall we say today. A lot of other stuff going on, and we're going to get to Zelensky because he's on Fox and he's refusing to apologize, and Trump is spouting off to reporters. We're going to get to all that. I get it. There's a lot going on, but this is not a good look, all right? It's not a good look, and I know you guys were disappointed yesterday. I was disappointed yesterday. I was disappointed today, and I think we're going to continue to be disappointed. But here's an interesting one. James Comey under investigation for running allegedly an off-books honeypot scheme. A honeypot scheme against Trump, trying to infiltrate Trump's campaign. That is a news story that came out of the Washington Times. But it may have another layer, according to an interview I did with somebody who was targeted by these honeypots. George Papadopoulos, more on that in a second. But remember, Comey had no use for Donald Trump. He was hoping he could get him into a double wide in some prison somewhere.
Just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population. But it's obviously doable.
Well, here's some new information. Not only is Kash Patel investigating Comey for these alleged honeypot schemes, George Papadopoulos gave me some information that suggests it was not just Trump's campaign that they were interested in, but multiple campaigns. Because according to the latest and greatest, they now have a 2015 effort of honeypot action that actually targeted George. And so he said he was targeted by 3. I'm like, George, I know you were a young kid at the time and everything, but okay, we're going to wake up and be a little bit more. Note to self, what do I tell my son? Be very, very careful of the woman who's overly interested in you, right? Okay. All that aside, he's happily married now to a beautiful woman, an absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. You're going to hear from her in a second. She's funny. She's like, I knew exactly who the honeypots were. Yeah. Anyway, go back to 2016. Go back to 2015. In 2015, they were on to George. George is like, I don't know why. I mean, I had kind of an international background. I think he had done a master's overseas in London. And he had had some experience within the energy world. He's like, for some reason, they picked me out of a hat. And they targeted Comey, he believes, targeted him specifically. Well, back then, he was on the Ben Carson campaign. But they felt that it was an entry point in, George believes, into the Ben Carson campaign, because Carson was doing really well at one point. And then when he moved over to the Trump campaign, they targeted him again. And then they targeted him again. So like 3 grand total targets. You were on another campaign first. Was it Ben Carson? So when this was going down, when they were first targeting you, were they targeting you on the Trump campaign or on Carson's?
Yeah, so it looks like it was Dr. Ben Carson's campaign, because that's who I was working for in 2015. I wasn't working for Donald Trump's campaign until March of 2016. So there was also a different report that came out that the CIA with foreign governments was actually targeting 26 Trump associates, and Dr. Ben Carson was one of those associates. I was one of them. So what it looks like was going on here, Trish, was that there was a full on-scale targeting of rivals to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's potential third term, which obviously would have been reflected in Hillary Clinton's potential victory.
If I'm following you correctly, they were out there trying to infiltrate other campaigns, not just the Trump campaign. They didn't know who was going to be the Republican nominee. They wanted to make sure that they had information on all the potential Republican nominees.
Yeah, so when I was on Ben Carson's campaign, he was actually the only candidate that actually led in the polls at one point during the campaign season. People thought it was candidate Trump. Actually, Ben Carson had 10 to 12% of the electorate. He was extremely popular among evangelical Christians, which was a major voting bloc, and it still is, obviously, in the United States. And I believe it was that support and that endorsement of Trump that really torpedo Ted Cruz's campaign. So when you have people with that type of support, Ted Cruz, other people who are very popular, it's no surprise that the FBI, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, with the Obama administration, was going to spread their tentacles into various campaigns, see who some of the people were in these campaigns, target them, spy on them, get information.
I mean, they're using government assets to do it. It's wild. It's absolutely, like this is like stuff in the movies, right? Like stuff that you don't really believe our U.S. government would do. But we've learned a lot of things, shall we say, in the last however many years. Yeah. Apparently they really like the honeypot thing. I mean, if we're to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was an intel asset. Anyway, his wife, Simona Mangiante, she thinks she knows who they are, and she kind of goes through it. And this is interesting. So she thinks she knows not only who these three women were. According to the Washington Times, one worked for the CIA. Forgive me. Both of them worked for the FBI. So they were both under Comey's domain. Apparently he ran the whole op himself. That's also according to the Washington Times. And they both worked for the FBI. One of them got promoted to CIA. But George is saying like he thinks there was a third there and that she was somehow also an employee of the FBI, but she was originally from Turkey. Let's let Simona and George tell us.
There were all these characters.
Do you know who they were? Do you think you know who they were?
Just in knowing how they look like, because of course I'm a woman, so I just I have retroactive jealousy. So,
so you think you know because you know which ones the way they look. I mean, I'm not trying to give it. We're not trying to disclose anybody's identities. I'm just curious. It sounds like there's one that has been reported, but there may have been some. I guess all working for the U.S., but from different nationalities.
Well, one is, I think it's a Turkish national, as they call her, a battle blonde with, her style was very revealing, let's say. So there was, it's not like
George. Okay.
Keep an eye on him. I was guessing how the FBI profiled what he likes. So it's important for me to know. Right?
Right. Useful information, right? What does the FBI think that my now husband is going to be into?
Exactly. That's right.
But there were two more.
And we have this, I think, an Israeli national as well, and an American one. That's what I think. And I believe I might have crossed the American one at some point because we used to work for the same law firm in London called the London Center of International Law Practice. And this place was a very shady place where we both, I think, been there for only a few months until we both realized in different times that, it was not really clear what they were doing over there. So I remember all this young professional coming at the table from different governments background, like myself, I was working for the European Union. So, and I remember I might have crossed there once, but before I even met him. So at least I know one of them, I think.
Wow. I mean, you guys got to write a movie. I mean, I know you have the documentary, but unbelievable, right? I mean, just crazy stuff. But listen, like this was their MO. And so poor George, he told the story about how, his candidate had just gotten elected. He's all excited. And they approached him outside his house. The FBI did, a couple of agents. And they said, hey, can you come with us to FBI headquarters? And he didn't think anything of it. Like anything of it, because they wanted to investigate Russian interference or something in the election. And he was sort of like, well, yeah, I'll tell them whatever I know. I mean, wouldn't you? So that's another lesson learned. If the FBI shows up at your house, you get yourself a lawyer fast. Mike Flynn didn't know to do this either. General Flynn got caught in a bad situation because James Comey deliberately sent people over there to him. And, it seems kind of unethical. To me, anyway. He knew that this in a normal administration wouldn't have worked. It was just that he felt like everybody was so green in the Trump administration, and so they didn't know to lawyer up. And this is how it went down. You may have to turn the volume up a little bit, But listen to him kind of laughing and smirking about how he went after General Mike Flynn by sending agents over, and Flynn didn't bother to get a lawyer or anything, and then found himself in a big pot of trouble.
It's hard to imagine 2 FBI agents ending up in the sit room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. The protocol, 2 men that all of us have perhaps increased appreciation for over the last 2 years. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
Yeah. So, that's how he rolls. Well, now he's under investigation himself. Kash Patel looking into all of this. And of course, it's what Comey feared, because he figured that Trump might be a little bit retaliatory. But, given what Trump has been through, you can kind of get it and understand it, right? You want a clean shop for either side. You can't be dealing with Obama's team that had been there for 8 years and had been hoping that they were going to get another 4 years through Hillary Clinton. By the way, you want to talk about some fishy stuff, just look at CGI and the fact that Bill Clinton was running that and collecting hundreds of millions of dollars from all these weird places all over the world in developing market, emerging market countries. And a lot of that money never made it to the people. I was talking with the guy who investigated the Haiti situation, and he said only 10% of that money made it. And by the way, they never really registered as a charity. I don't know how you could be Secretary of State and have your husband be out there collecting ka-ching, 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 all this money, hundreds of millions of dollars from all over the world. I mean, they really made Hunter Biden look like small potatoes, let's be honest. But this was the honeypot scandal. So basically, according to this protected whistleblower disclosure, one of the whistleblowers came forward. There was a female agent involved in the attempt to have undercover agents target the Trump team. And according to the Washington Times, it was all run directly by Comey, and it was all off the books. And so Comey knew that they would be looking into this. This may be why he was so adamant that the public could not elect Trump, and yet they did it anyway. So now I'm kind of wondering, what happens with Diddy? Right? If we're seeing that, stuff is getting destroyed, then what happens with P. Diddy? Are we going to learn anything there? Quick reminder before I go to it. Do not forget, it's the weekend, okay? It's the weekend. So go to 76 Research. Use my code word $. Just $1 a month. If you don't like it, we'll give you the $1 back. Seriously, we will. Money back guarantee. So seriously, no harm, no foul. And you get a whole weekend to start looking at this and start planning your financial future. I love that Mike Nelson loves my research. You know why? Because the research, hopefully, if we're doing our jobs right, will make you money. That's the idea. So 76research.com. Use code word $1 today. Diddy. So this is another one. We're finding out they had all kinds of cameras at those wild white parties, as they were called. There were cameras everywhere inside the house. And so agents busted in on him, on his house, and they got all of the goods. So what happened to the goods? That's another question Pam should be asking. This is bizarre. Look what happened. The lawyer in the Diddy case suddenly just disappeared when said, I can't do this anymore. Under no circumstances can I continue in this case, he said. And so then it leaves us kind of wondering, what was there? And are we ever going to find out? I mean, is this why Ellen DeGeneres had to leave the country? I ask it with some humor, but I do kind of wonder, was this all a ruse? She said, I can't stay in the country because it's Donald Trump. We're leaving this Trump dump. That was the headline in TMZ. And then, it comes out that, it seems that Ellen had a nice little relationship of sorts with P. Diddy, and that she used to go to those parties, some of the wildest parties in showbiz. And you know what? They're using that term wildest as though it's a compliment. This was not, these were bad, horrible, disgusting, awful parties that really have no place on the planet. Mr. Know-It-All, thank you for your generosity. Ellen's tweet, look at this one. Happy birthday, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, or as I call him, Cuddle McSnuggle Stuff. You don't need to know why. No, I definitely don't want to know why. But this is interesting because some people who had some dealings with her over in Australia, Sky News, hello to all our friends in Australia. I have a few of you, I've noticed. Anyway, they didn't have a whole lot of appreciation for one Ellen DeGeneres, and they were asking recently the same question that I've been asking. Is her sudden disappearance and selling of the property for some $98 million, is that tied at all to Diddy? And by the way, are we going to find out whatever happened there?
They're losing their minds.
She sounded so sincere, didn't she?
Very
she could
sincere.
Virtually choke on her words. But the best one for me is Ellen DeGeneres, who is, by the way, a very nasty person. I've had dealings with her in Australia. Could I tell you some stories about that cow? But anyway, good riddance to her. But she was quite friendly with that P. Diddy bloke, wasn't she?
Well, this is why I say release the Diddy files.
Yeah.
Release the Diddy files. Come on, Donald Trump. We want to know whose name.
So maybe she's hightailing out of there before all that is thrown at her as well. But what a bunch of hypocrites. I wonder if
what a bunch of hypocrites. Indeed. We have a big story. This is sort of like the news of the day. This is what we did on the earlier live show, right? Look, I have to go live twice a day. That's a news cycle these days. My gosh, you guys. I'm working hard. I think that, Donald Trump is going to help build the GDP of the Trish Regan channel because the news doesn't stop. I mean, I would like some sleep now and then. I had to work last Sunday too, and I was sick on top of it. Well, lo and behold, Donald Trump today kicking Vladimir Zelensky out of the White House. He didn't appreciate what Zelensky had to say. I got to show you some clips because it's worth seeing. But first, let's go straight to Donald Trump reacting to reporters' questions after kicking Zelensky the heck out of there.
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, and all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I get that. I don't have to tell you that. Go ahead. I think you know the answer to it. What? Wait. Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards, and all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. I want anybody that's going to make peace. If he's capable of making peace, which he may or may not be, but I want somebody that's going to make peace. Again, he doesn't have the cards. When we sign up, he's got all of the cards. That doesn't mean he can fight. He's got to stop the fighting, stop the death. He's losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's time to stop the death. Say it? Well, he says he wants it now. He wants to come back right now, but I can't do that.
Do you want immediate ceasefire?
They should have an immediate ceasefire. That was the other thing. He didn't want to do about ceasefire. A ceasefire could take place immediately.
He did not want to do a ceasefire. Unbelievable what we saw transpiring there today. Donald Trump kicking Zelensky out of the White House. I mean, he had no use for him because it was very clear that they weren't going to get anywhere. I mean, gosh, it started off, well, it was like mom and dad sitting down the kid who's just a complete reckless loser spending all the kids, the family's money, and they're like, hey, we need to have a heart-to-heart. And the kid throws a temper tantrum and won't listen to what mom and dad are saying. So Trump's getting angry because all he could do is talk about Putin this, Putin that. Some of my sources have said that Zelensky was coached by people that had been close to Obama and to Biden, and that maybe that coaching put him in a position where he felt like he had to go in guns blazing and just fight, and that was not the right tactic to take. And he kept blaming Putin over and over and over again, and Donald Trump started to get really pretty darn sick of it. I want you to see.
Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
Wow. All right. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I want to show you another clip. Here's J.D. Vance, like trying to talk some sense into Zelensky. And like, it's just not flying. Let's watch this.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
even
entire
today,
meeting, you said thank
even
you.
Today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
I almost thought he was going to save your ass. I mean, it's awful, right? Like, people are dying. This is real. Can't we find a better way? I mean, Trump is like, it's like watching The Apprentice, right? It's like, buddy, like, you got nothing. If you don't have us, you got nothing.
The country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
And he's right. Okay, so we gave you, don't say that you're doing it all on your own. You did it with us. The president gave you a lot of money. It's not really clear where all that money went. You can't even tell us where all that money went. Now, can you? Chanthra Hainsana, thank you very much. We appreciate the generosity. This is a live show, guys. Brian Bloomer, thank you very much as well. I'm going to get to your comments, but I just got to say, like, at least like somebody's talking some sense, right? Like, somebody's talking some sense here. And we haven't had anybody do that. I mean, you had Biden saying, how much more can I give you? How much more can I give you? You got to wonder what that was all about. Don't you think that's a little strange? It was like every time Zelensky came, it was like, here's another 50 mil. I played a soundbite on the earlier show of him saying, here you go, $225 million. Oh, Brian's saying $10, Putin's calling Trump right now. I'm sure Putin actually, look, we don't know what we don't know, right? Like, this is complicated. And what I would say is everything that they told us about Trump and a few other things, including like Hunter Biden's laptop that was generated by Putin, like that was all fake. So I think Trump's looking at this and he's like, hey, you know, I sort of maybe trusted you initially, but you were wrong on everything. And it turns out that, you know, Putin wasn't entirely, you know, we got to be sensible here. We have to understand that, you know, sophisticated players in a sophisticated world, but it's a little weird that Adam Schiff was doing what Adam Schiff was doing, and Russia with Hillary Clinton and the dossier that was all fake, bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton's law firm that hired Fusion GPS, which hired ex-British spy Christopher Steele to write and concoct a crazy, crazy story about Donald Trump and Putin having compromise, that word comes up again, on him, and then using that to get a FISA warrant and tap Carter Page's phone. I mean, this is wild. And then we learn on top of that they were sending honeypots into various campaigns. It's like, as George said, they probably, if this is all proven out, and a lot of it already has been, they just did not want anybody else to win. So they were out there spying on the so-called political enemies that were internal, that were just the other party. So, Chandra, I want to get your comment. If Zelensky wants peace, the old deal's gone. The new deal will be more Trump, more brilliant. Think of the art of the deal. That's what I was thinking about, the art of the deal. It's like we were getting a tutorial on that today, and he's like, Zelensky, you got nothing. So, maybe you should rethink this. He did extend a little bit of an olive branch. He said, listen, he wasn't very respectful to me, but I'm willing to let him come back to the table when he's actually serious about a ceasefire and really wants peace. When peace is on the table, then we can talk. But, the rest of it was kind of a mess. So Zelensky got a big opportunity to say something bigger and better and maybe apologize on Fox News today. He had an interview right after he got kicked out of the White House with one Brett Baer. So how did that go? you might ask. Well, I'm going to show you because it seems like he's sticking to his guns here.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things that where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing. Yes, we are partners. You know, we are very close partners. We have to be fair. We have to be very free.
No apology, though. So now there's talk that, he may not even be able to stay on in Ukraine because the people really don't appreciate this. Like, who the heck wants to be at war like that? And so he's running out of cards to play. Of course, think about the fact that he showed up today and couldn't seem to find a suit. It was funny because Donald Trump greeted him at the White House and he said, "Oh, I see you dressed up today," which was like, a little bit of a dig. And then somebody in the Oval Office had this to say.
My second question for President Zelensky. No. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting
I don't have such.
office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like
yours.
Yes.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for.
Note to Zelensky. You might want to wear a suit the next time you sit down for negotiations with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and the entire team, okay? You just might want to dress the part. You might want to have a little bit more deference. You might not want to come out, Putin. Forgive me, that's my New Hampshire accent. I always say to you guys, you got to hear me say mitten. There you just did. Or kitten. Yeah, Putin. Sorry. Putin. I got to work on that. Anyway, he really needs to wear a suit. I mean, Donald Trump this morning, the first thing he said to him was like, "Hey, buddy, do you have any clothes?" This was terrific. I want to show you. Let me see if I can find it for you because Donald Trump is just like so over this guy. Watch.
Ready close? How are you? Ready shut? He's all dressed up today.
Oh, he's all dressed up today. He's all dressed up today. But you know what? He made it very clear. We have nothing here. If you're not willing to agree to a ceasefire, then there's no point.
Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened, but he didn't break it with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think
serious fireworks. And you know what? It was all caught on tape. At one point, J.D. Vance was like, it's really not nice of you to come here and like yell at us about this money and everything and do it all in front of the media. And maybe this is something that should be done behind the scenes. And Donald Trump's like, no, you know what? We might as well put it all out in the open. We might as well let everybody see this because he doesn't want a ceasefire deal. He's not willing to agree to this. He's not willing to agree to the minerals deal where the U.S. would get a stake in the profits going forward, to be a profit-sharing plan, which, by the way, would be good for Ukraine because then we'd actually have a vested interest in helping make sure that they are okay and protect them. He just wants to get paid for it, right? Like, you can't just keep handing out money every single day. You know, not unless you have a heck of a lot of it. And frankly, the U.S. doesn't have it. We don't have it. Have you seen the national debt? And we're running massive deficits. It's like there's no desire to pay off any of this except from Elon. Thank you very much. I'll tell you, it's a big question whether, I mean, look, I hope Social Security is there forever, but I look at it, I'm like, these numbers are not good. So a lot of younger people, are going to have to come to new terms and older people too. Listen, take care of yourself first. I always say that. Pay yourself first. Make sure that you are looking out for numero uno. We can help you do it at 76 Research, because wonderful, wonderful information over there for you. My friend Rob, that is the co-founder with me, started it with me. And, he spent like 20 years on Wall Street running billions of dollars. And this is what he does, right? So we have 3 portfolios. We have the 76 report. That's just $1 a month for the first 2 months, and it goes to $9.95. But you can cancel anytime. Listen, I think it's worth it because you want to be invested in this game right now. You want to be invested in America. You want to be invested in yourself. It is important. I cannot stress that enough. And listen, I mean, it's wild, right? Oh my gosh, I'm getting everybody's age. You guys are telling me, and Mike Costa, you're like, he's going to wind up. Oh, I won't even read that. We'll leave that for everybody else to see. But yeah, I don't think that Zelensky is going to be able to pull this one off. I don't think he's got the will of the people even behind him. I mean, it is, it's really a moment in time unlike any other. And you have a president in there who is very much unlike any other. And he's willing to let you in on the action, right? He's like, bring the cameras in. Let's watch this. You can see this. And I think that level of transparency is something that the American people are very much due and owed. I thank you for being here. We together are on the front lines of history. I am back with you with more stuff over the weekend. And I am back live, of course, on Monday. 2 shows today. I'll see you very soon.